Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. I'm Greg Christ, your co-host for this show. Frank Fair will be joining us here in just a minute. But before we move on any further, we want to ask you to like and subscribe first of all, and then grab you a martini and a cigar and listen to our intro music here. All right, and there's Frank magically. Now, I don't know if that was the martini song or the boxing song. I think that was the boxing music.
Yeah,
we have several different ones, so I'm never sure which one's playing. But Frank, we've got a great show lined up tonight. We ask everyone watching to really take note of some of this stuff. It's a kind of I wouldn't say a forgotten era, but maybe a forgotten over time era of WVU football and all the things that me and you have talked about this week and research that we've done. One of the things that just amazes me as I look through is the name of some of these players. You may not remember the era, but you remember these players and you know these players. Man, what a group of people that played football at WVU back in that era. And we're really excited about this show and about who we have on. Our guests will be coming on here in just a little bit. But like I said, all the information you sent me, it's just been fascinating to look at, and I think people will enjoy hearing some of it.
Yeah, when we decided to do this show, when we were invited to do it, this is one of the first shows we wanted to do because you and I both share a love of Mountaineer football, college football history, and we'll look at a couple of slides here to give everyone a perspective. We're so pleased to have with us WVU Sports Hall of Famer Gene Lathey, a West Virginia boy who played at WVU, tremendous athlete. We'll talk with him. We were also going to have Jim Peyton with us tonight, but was going to be with us from Wheeling, but they're having technical difficulties there. And so we're going to have to involve Jim at another time. And we really appreciate it because we're going to go back to the early 50s. And let me put the first slide up here that we can take a look at. And I think this is really, really important for fans to know. You and I have talked about this a lot, that, when we think about when did West Virginia go on the national football map, I think both of us would argue that it really happened with the Pappy Lewis era of the 1950s and the teams that people like Gene played on, the teams he played on. And you'll see other names there, Freddie Wyant, Bruce Bosley, Sam Huff, Chuck Howley, Beef Lamone. I mean, these were great players, and we're also pleased to have with us tonight Jill Underdonk Stevenson, the daughter of Bill Underdonk, who was another great player during that era. Bill has since passed, but we're just great to have Jill with us, and you'll meet here later. But before Pappy Lewis came to West Virginia, and he came in 1949, 1950, West Virginia was an average team. In that second bullet point, you'll see that in the 20 years before he came, West Virginia only had 7 500-plus seasons, and a lot of those were just one game over 500. But you'll also see in that first bullet point that there was a period back in the 20s with Clarence Spears and Rat Rogers. Both of them are in the WVU Sports Hall of Fame, two great coaches, where they were 33-3, but it wasn't sustained. So enter this Art Pappy Lewis, who, by the way, still has a tremendous mark in the National Football League. After World War II, he was named the head coach of the Cleveland franchise. It wasn't the Browns back then. And he still is the youngest ever head coach in NFL history. But then he went on to Washington Lee as a head coach, and he wasn't all that successful, only 11-17. But then when he came to West Virginia, and we're going to go through the records in a few minutes, boy, did he turn things around. It took him a bit of time, but you'll see in that fourth bullet point, from 1952 to 55, the team was 31-7. went to its first major bowl, the Sugar Bowl. West Virginia in 1952. It was the first time the Mountaineers ever beat a top 20 team. The great players that we mentioned. Unfortunately, after he left Morgantown, he worked for the Steelers as a scout, and he died of a heart attack. And so he only he lived a short life, but had a great impact.
Yeah, and you look like I said, the research and the stories we've read. One of the things that stands out about him was what a great recruiter he was.
Oh.
He was able to connect. And, when you look at these names, so many, you look at the areas from where they're from, so many West Virginia guys or local Ohio, Pennsylvania right beside us. So many guys from this area that he recruited, and the stories you hear about his recruiting capabilities stand out. And again, you look at those names of some of those players, my goodness, some of the greatest all time at WVU. And even in the NFL, some of the greatest NFL players as well.
Absolutely. Some of the best players of all time. And what's amazing about this, and we were talking about this before the start, the nation took note. And there was a magazine back in the day called Life Magazine, and the Saturday Evening Post was another. And they featured Art Pappy Lewis, and Gene, and he'll talk about this later, was saying that, the way Pappy recruited, he wanted the recruit, but he knew he had to go through the mother.
Right.
and there's a great picture in the Life magazine, and I actually have this included this in my book of him recruiting a player in Western Pennsylvania, and they show him at the kitchen table with the mother. He's talking with the mother and the recruits off to the side, and he was a great recruiter. But if we look at this chart just for a second, and we're going to go across here, starting at the top, he didn't inherit much when he came, and it took him a while. The first 2 years, he was 7-13. And I think, as Gene said, I think he only won 2 games his first year in 1950, and didn't do much better in 51. And he did not beat West Virginia did not beat a major college team until 1952. Yeah. But boy, then they took off. They lost the opener to Furman, and then they lost to Penn State. So here he was, after going 7-13 the first 2 years, and now he's 1-2. And I'll bet you, if we were back in Morgantown in those days, there were people calling for his scalp.
Oh yeah,
yeah, because now he was only 8-15, but then they went on a 6-game winning streak, including wins over 18 Pitt. We're going to have a little film of that to show in a few seconds. Virginia Tech and South Carolina, and that Pitt team is the first team in 52 West Virginia ever beat a ranked team. So it's just amazing. And then the next year, after the 53 season, it was 54 actually, they went to the Sugar Bowl and played Georgia Tech, a top 10 team. And they opened that season with 7 wins in a row, losing only to South Carolina and eventually Georgia Tech. But look at that. They closed the season by going to North Carolina State and beating NC State in Raleigh 61-0. It's just amazing. And then the other thing that we'll show, we've got film of this, the Mountaineers of 1953 to 55, Greg, you know this. They beat Penn State 3 straight years.
Yep.
Nobody had done that in Morgantown before or since.
That's right.
And they just did it's just, boy, it takes my breath away. Just incredible.
Yeah, amazing numbers there. And again, we talk often on this show about the foundations being laid for the program. And even though, toward the end of his era, it fell off a little bit, but picked right back up within the next decade. It was back up again and has been up ever since. And you have to feel foundations were laid right there. And again, I think, making it visible that West Virginia could get really good football players up here if you recruited them right. And I think he set the example for that. And I think coaches from that point on, did the same or close to the same as far as recruiting good players, pretty much locally is what he did. And it's a testament to, his diligence and his hard work and his, recognition of talent. I mean, I don't think there's any question. I read the story about Freddie Wyatt when he saw him in high school. Freddie Wyatt was a little guy, and but when he saw him, he stated that he found his quarterback. He knew, and of course Freddie Wyatt, I think, was the quarterback in those Penn State victories, I believe, if I read all the info correctly. So just an amazing era and an amazing time, and again, amazing football players. So.
Yeah, well, with that, you're absolutely correct, and it is really an honor for Greg and me to bring our guest in, the great Gene Lathey, and there he is. Gene, you're on the air. Thank you so much for being here. You're live from Dunbar, and we appreciate it. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me give you the audience an overview of Gene from Dunbar, West Virginia. And we were talking before the show. We think we'll have to go back and check, but we think every single player on those teams, either West Virginia, Western Pennsylvania, or Eastern Ohio, and a good bunch of them were West Virginia boys. Gene played in 1952, 1954, through 1956. He was a 3-year starting offensive guard and linebacker. And what we'll talk about, and Gene will talk about, back in those days, players pretty much were expected to play both ways.
Yep.
And when the years that Gene played for Pappy Lewis, West Virginia went 8-1, 8-2, and 6-4, and they won 3 Southern College championships. Gene made the All-Southern Conference team in each of his 3 major years, and he's also a member voted into not only the WVU Sports Hall of Fame, but the WVU all-time team of 1950 to 59. He was named to the All-South team to play in an All-Star game back year when I was a kid, would watch it every year, the North-South game, and he would play for the South in 1956, and he was a Boys Life magazine All-America in 1956. And he also earned recognition as a preseason All-America in 1956 by United Press. So, Gene...
we're out of time after all that.
Yeah, there's a lot to say, and I've got another introduction. We've got another introduction for Bill Underdonk. But Gene, did you think about? I'll start it off, and then Greg's going to come in. Did you think about going any other place other than West Virginia to play football?
Well, I was thinking back then, Morris Harvey College. In fact, I had an offer there, but we were in North-South camp practicing, and someone yelled for me to go over the sideline, and somebody was wanting to talk to me. So I went over there, and it was Pappy Lewis, and he said, "Son, you're gained a little weight since the last time we saw you." And I said, "Yes, sir," because what I did, I worked at Miller Drugstore in Dunbar, and I drank milkshakes all summer long. And I picked up 10 pounds. And I said, "Yes, sir. I'm around 200 now." And he looked at me and he said, "Son," put his arm around me. He said, "How would you like to come up and play for me?" And that did it. So he went up and talked to my parents. And then in the fall, or actually in September, we headed to Jackson Mill, where all the excitement began. And so that's how I ended up there. And don't regret a bit of it, obviously. Put on my aluminum cleats.
Yeah.
That's the truth. We wore aluminum cleats.
Yeah.
For 3 years. And boy, they were quite a weapon. anyways,
You
got
meant
up there.
Yeah, you mentioned Jackson Milton. I have a picture of the practice right here from Life magazine that I mentioned before. And you were talking earlier before we started. You went through a transition with helmets back in the day, right? Started with one type of helmet and then shifted.
Yeah, well, a lot of people thought we wore leather helmets, but that wasn't true. We wore the plastic and no head, no nose guard, and until 1954, 52 and 53, you just put your face forward and get it smashed. And then 54, we did a single bar, which we thought was the greatest thing in the world.
Hell yeah.
And so
I know a gentleman from back from my hometown. He didn't play. He was a lot older than this, and he was telling me one time he was a old curmudgeon. He'd complain, and I was a coach, and he'd always, I coached his great grandkids, and he would say, "Yeah, these kids think they're tough these days." He said, "By golly, when we practiced football," he said, "when we got finished," he said, "we just folded up our helmets, put them in our back pockets, and went home." So yeah, it's tough. And you mentioned that face guard not having it. You know, they keep talking in the NFL now or in college how to get people to quit using their heads for a weapon to tackle, and they're calling all these penalties. I said, take that face mask off there and see what happens. They'll stop that stuff.
Hell, we had one set of practice uniforms at Jackson Mill. We practiced twice a day. We tried to lay them out to dry, but they were still wet the next morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. Picture that. Putting a wet uniform on and out you go.
Wow.
But it was a murder situation at Jackson Mill. Every night there'd be people out there on the road hitchhiking, leaving in the still of the night. So we'd say, "Well, who's going in this cabin today?"
Yeah, if you try to put a wet uniform on them today like that, you'd have a player strike. They wouldn't let them play if you had to do that.
Yeah. Well, we got $15 laundry money, and that was about it. And we called it laundry money, but it was going the first day of the month that we received. And
yeah, I was going to say a lot of fans don't realize because the teams don't go to preseason anymore at Jackson's Mill. But that was used by coaches as, can you make this team? And it was brutal. And a lot of players left. They just said, we can't take it. And, if anybody's watched that film on Bear Bryant, he was doing the same thing when he was at Texas A&M. So it wasn't unusual. But, Gene, when you got there, as we mentioned in the intro, West Virginia wasn't a very good team. You were there at the beginning in 52 when it turned around. Talk to us about what it was like to be on a team that hadn't been very successful, but then really, really got on a roll.
Well, I remember, and I believe it was 52. Excuse me. But it's the first time that Fred Wyatt went in for McInerney, I think, the quarterback. And that's where he got his start. I think it was Furman.
That's right. It was.
Was it Furman? And Pappy Lewis, it was a story. Pappy Lewis sent in a play, and Fred disobeyed the order and threw a pass and went for the touchdown. And Pappy reamed him out pretty good. But from then on, Fred called his own plays. We didn't have messages coming in all the time. And of course, back in 52, it was a 2-platoon system. I mean, it was a free substitution. In other words, a timeout or anything, a player could go in. But in 53, the 2-platoon system went out. So that left a lot of positions. A defensive position might have had 4 or 5 players at that one position simply because they played either defense or offense. So, of course, the first 2 years I was there, I thought I was involved in boxing rather than football. Because all we did was fight. And that was the roughest time. Because the guys would hold you. You know, if you got a freshman and it makes a upperclassman look bad, then they get chewed out by the coach. The coach would say, if you can't block him, Fuzzy, let's see, what was it? If you can't block him, let him go. And so it's very embarrassing to the upperclassmen when a freshman or sophomore made them look bad. So
do you watch a lot of college football today?
Yes.
What I mean, I know you've already mentioned the aluminum cleats and that sort of thing. We know all that's different. What are some of the things that you like about the game, and what are some of the things? I'm sure there's other things that you don't care much about. And I know you mentioned Fred White calling his own plays. I'm sure that was not the usual route to take, and today it's not. They got earpieces and everything else in to relay plays into them. But what's some of the things that you don't like about it, differences you see?
Well, first of all, they eliminated the small guy because you can't block below the knees.
Yeah.
And that was our big thing, blocking Rosie Greer weighed close to 300. You block below the knee, and that bothers the big man, and he's got to get down there and try to pull you away from the knee. And so now they just kind of dance with one another, And if you'll notice in a play, there's very few linemen on the ground except where the play is. So I always said if I could survive the first quarter with a big man, then we could whip him. But that's a big difference. That I don't like that at all. Or even downfield, throwing a body block. That's a beautiful thing, the body block. Catch a guy unaware.
Yeah. Yeah, those are always the good ones. And you say you do watch a lot of college football. What impresses you about it?
Well, first of all, the speed. See, we were on natural turf, and of course, that slows the game down a lot. And when you're on artificial turf, man, that speed picks up, and the collisions become more violent, and that's a major thing. And number two, I don't know if I could ever handle one of those helmets that they wear now. Looks like something from outer space. I don't know how much they pay, but I think I would be bothered with that. And I like the quarterback position, in which the pinpoint accuracy that these quarterbacks have is unbelievable. And other than that, I think things about the same.
Yeah. Well, and along the lines of the quarterback, Freddie Wyant didn't pass all that much. He was really a field general, and you guys were specialized in running. And we were talking before the show, Greg. There's a name of a running back then. You think of Gene's names and Chuck Howley and Sam Huff, but there was a guy named Bobby Moss,
Yes.
who was, and what was his average per carry average, Gene? It was way up there.
8 point something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Carry. And he was from Huntington, and his brother was the one who died in the plane crash.
Oh, that's right.
Down in Huntington.
Marshall. Yeah.
Shorty wasn't.
Yeah.
Shorty Moss.
Oh, the coaches.
There's Moss there, right beside the same stuff to the right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, you got, boy, I'll tell you, Bosley's there. Sam Huff, and there's another one that is a great picture that made the rounds nationally. That's Bruce Bosley, 77, with Freddie Wyant, and of course, the great Pappy Lewis in the middle as a coach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another great back was Joe Marconi, which was right beside of Fred. That was quite a backfield.
Yeah.
Now, Fred was a tremendous leader, and he's also a clown of the team, quick-witted, and everybody just loved him.
Yeah.
And he was left-handed, which you didn't see that much back in those days.
Yeah.
And but he was almost perfection on the split tee option play.
Oh.
And you had Tommy Allman from Charleston, which is probably the fiercest guy I ever met on the football field. He was a fullback, and he led the way with the blocks downfield. And I've seen Fred in a complete parallel position on the ground and pitching the ball out. He waited to the last minute.
Yeah. We actually have some film here. It might be good, Greg and Gene, to throw it. There's no sound, so we're going to be able to talk over. But it starts actually with that first big win against Pitt in 52. And then there's a game with Washington and Lee, and then the 3 straight wins over Penn State. I'll play it right now. This is a pass to Paul Bischoff, who runs it in, and that was that first pitch. This is an incredible film here, filmed by a family in Cumberland, Maryland, in 1952 against Washington and Lee. And it's amazing to me, guys, the quality of that film that was filmed, 52.
Yep. In color and everything.
Oh, it's amazing to me, and we appreciate that. I don't have any idea why they were playing Washington and Lee in Maryland, but they were, and obviously we're in the gold and they're in the blue. And you mentioned Joe Marconi. He scored 2 touchdowns, but again, going both ways, he scored 1 touchdown on an interception, and just a great experience there. Big crowd on a Saturday. And then we go into the Penn State sequence here, and you'll see exactly what Gene was talking about in terms of Freddie Wyant's skills. That's coming up They won that game 31-13 against. Here are the 3 straight wins. This is 1953. There's Freddie. Didn't pass much, but here's one to Bob Marshall.
Wow.
That was a good one.
Oh, this is a great one. Bruce blocked it and then fell on it for a touchdown.
Right.
Official liked it.
That's the great Lenny Moore. For those who know Penn State football, that's Lenny Moore. Look how tall, long arms, great running back.
There's
there it is.
Beautiful.
Really was. Nice pitch. See you later.
Is that Dick Nicholson?
Boom, touchdown. Yeah, most of the players played both ways. And then the last game was a blowout. I mean, that's at Penn State, and Penn State just got blown out. The Mountaineers just took it to them 21-7. And Bobby Moss and Joe Marconi had 200 yards together.
I think Penn State gained 30-some yards that game.
Yeah.
Wow.
I remember.
Maybe they can do that at the end of August, we hope. Yeah, only 30.
Or when I hand off between Bruce and myself, I was playing beside of Bruce, and he tried to evade us, and we tackled him for a loss. And I didn't think I was being too smart. I just said, "What's wrong, Lenny? Don't you like the broad brow patch?" And the official warned me he's about to throw his flag. And of course, you know, if somebody say that now, nobody'd say anything to a player.
That's for sure.
You mentioned
I didn't mean anything, you know, racial or anything, you know, for that matter. We used to say running up the briar patches or in the middle of the line.
Yeah. You mentioned a minute ago, you mentioned, I think it was Rosie Greer. I think I heard you put that name out there. Looking back and thinking back, other than practice, because obviously you were practicing with some pretty heavy, talented guys. Who's the best, maybe let's say, defensive lineman you ever went against?
Pardon me?
Probably the best. Who was the best defensive or offensive lineman, either one, because you went both ways. Who was the best opposing lineman you played against?
Well, opposing lineman. Penn State, by the name of Corky Valentine. He was, I always tried to say, I will give you one time to block me and then you can't block me anymore. And I just tell myself that. And Corky got a hold of me one play, and I was just backpedaling. I couldn't get to the ground, and we passed an official, and it was a really good block. And I went to the official like this, and the official threw a flag. And I went up there after they were penalized. I said, "Nice block, Corky." But Roosevelt Greer caught me on the opening kickoff, and I saw the sky for about 5 minutes. But
Jim Brown.
That was the greatest game I ever played in, was the second win up at Penn State. And
tell me about Jim Brown. Jim Brown at Syracuse.
Pardon?
Jim Brown at Syracuse.
Yeah, what did I say?
Jim Brown. You said Roosevelt Greer.
Roosevelt Greer was Penn State.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then I can't think of the I'm a little slow in my old age.
That's all right.
What about Jim Brown
Oh, Jim Brown.
at Syracuse?
That was
Yeah.
Syracuse. I intercepted a pitch out to Jim Brown, deep pitch out, and I anticipated as a linebacker, and I went up and thought, boy, I'm going to make the classic tackle here. So I hit him right in the thigh pads. I was going to lift him, and I just folded. And he's the greatest back I ever saw.
Yeah.
He still,
you know,
was like iron. I got up and my head, I had a big round bruise on my cervical, the big cervical part of my neck from the impact. And I was knocked dizzy for a while, but he was something else. You know, they had an unbalanced T formation and they had big tackles. So obviously I had to shift over to the big tackle. And by the time all the big tackle had to do was screen me, and Jim Brown be coming through the line. All you do is reach out, grab a hold of him, and tackle him, and he's already gained 5 yards, you know?
Yeah.
So he was unstoppable.
Well, and again, there's a link to WVU because the Syracuse coach back then was the great Ben Schwartzwalter. They
Right.
won the national championship in '59. And you're right. They had the unbalanced line. They ran what they call the scissors play, which befuddled defensive backs and linemen, particularly linemen. Ben Schwartzwalter, he's in the WVU Hall of Fame as well because he played at WVU in the 30s as a 135-pound center. Shows you how different the game is. He was 135 pounds. 135-pound center, but what a head coach. He's in the College Hall of Fame too. And I was living in Syracuse and saw Jimmy Brown play. Greg knows this. I agree with you. I've never seen any player then or since better than that. He was, and smart, you know. And that's the other thing. A lot of those players, especially back then, I mean, Freddie Wyatt was an engineering major. I mean, studies were taken very seriously.
Yeah. Well, we have Dick Nicholson from Richwood, great halfback. And, of course, he had that familiar last touchdown down the sideline, which two Penn State guys were closing in on him. He went right between them, went on into the goal line and scored. But that was the greatest game I ever participated in. 7 of us played 60 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, and Freddie Wyatt was quoted. He said, "I never told my teammates this, but he said I didn't think we were going to win the game because I think WVU was behind. I think 14 to 6 or something, and then came back with 2 touchdowns, and that was one of them. And you guys pulled it out. Incredible game."
Well, that waning moments of the game, there was this togetherness attitude within the huddle, and I knew we were going to win. I mean, I just had the feeling we were going to win. So 3 years in a row, that's quite impressive.
Boy.
It happened again until 20 years later, I think.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's amazing, Greg, when you think about it and what those guys did back then. You know, to me, if you ask me what periods of WVU football, Mountaineer football stick out, there have been great ones. But when you look at where WVU was and what these guys did, and the collection of talent. It just blows your mind.
Yeah. I'll tell you a story of Jim Brown and Sam Huff. We were playing at home. Sam called us all together because he's the kickoff specialist. And he said, "Okay, fellas, I'm going to kick away from Jim Brown." So, okay, Sam, good idea. And he kicks off, and Jim Brown didn't even have to move. He caught it right on the run and down the sideline. And I think Fred White finally pushed him out at 5-yard line. We all came back and said, "Sam, that was really a great idea."
Oh, fantastic. Greg, do you want to ask a few more questions? Then we'll bring Jill in to talk about her dad.
Yep. I want to real quickly. I know we introduced the show talking about Pappy Lewis. I would like for Gene, if you will, just talk a little bit about Pappy Lewis, what kind of person he was. I know you said he was a great recruiter, that sort of thing. What kind of coach he was, how you talked about the Jackson's meal being murderous. Talk a little bit about the coach and the man, just how you saw him.
Well, first of all, he was all for the team. I mean, he would tell us inside the training room or where we had our meetings. He said that we are the only friends you guys have in this room, and just remember that. You had Coach Corum, Coach Shockey, Ed Shockey, you had Coach Russ Crane of the old Oskiwawa from Iowa. And every time I'd come out on the field, he'd say, he told me a joke one time. I couldn't remember it all, but I'd come out on the field and he'd say, "Lathey, how's your character?" And I'd say, "Irreproachable, Coach, irreproachable." Every time we went to practice.
Yeah.
He was great. He's a great person. And anyways, Pappy, we're talking about Pappy. I'll give you an example. At the school cafeteria, they served calf's tongue to us at a meal one time.
Oh my gosh.
There was a revolt amongst the players. So Pappy got a calf's tongue and put it in an envelope and walked over to the president and said, "I wouldn't eat this shit, and I don't expect my boys to."
Yeah.
Use the language.
That's fine. That is great. Calf's tongue. Wow.
But Pappy was, I remember at the North Carolina State game, it's all raining the whole game, pouring. And it was our last game. And he went around shaking everybody's hand who were graduating. And he came to me and he said, "I'm going to shake your hand too, Lathey, because you were a group of them." So I had another year. And then he said, "We would never have lost a game had I not gotten too close to you guys." So I think that's the trademark we could leave with Pappy.
Yeah.
He just was a player person. Kind of guy. And his early death.
Oh.
I was in the Army then and I heard about it.
Yeah. And the other thing about that, and I'll put this slide back up, under that far left column at the very bottom. And this, I think, is a couple comments we can all just take to the bank. Number one is when there are good times, celebrate them, thank the Lord, because it never lasts. And what happened is that string of wins didn't continue. And in 1958 and 59, because Pappy was the head coach through the entire 50s, he was 7-12 in the last 2 years. The same as the way he started out. He was 7-13 the first 2 years, 7-12 the last 2 years, and it was 52-57. And that's just, to me, is just amazing. So, enjoy the great times and know when to get out.
That's a good observation. I never realized that.
And then even worse than that, is you remember, West Virginia was winless in 1960. So it went from, being in the Sugar Bowl and having a team for the epics for all time, to starting to go downhill, not having winning seasons the last 2 years of Pappy. And then when Gene Corum came in as head coach, not winning a game in 1960.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah. Hey, Jill, why don't we bring you in here? Change places with Gene, and we'll talk about your dad.
All right, I'll just spin this around.
Yeah.
There you go.
How are you all?
Yeah. Jill Underdonk Stevenson, and this is one photo of your dad. Great lineman.
Well, thank you.
Just a great one. And another one here that I have right here.
Right.
And
my mom and my dad, they met in gosh, they were kids. And so she has kept a treasure trove of articles and pictures and everything, because she was there with him, when it was all going on. So, and we love sharing that. And Frank, I appreciate you keeping my dad's memory alive, and revisiting with these guys. They've been, I've known them all my life, since I was a kid. Sam was Dad's roommate in college, and they met in the North-South game. And then when they went to WVU, Freddie and Dad were the captain of the North in the high school. And then when they got up to West Virginia, they became college roommates. And I wish my mom would be interviewed, because she could tell you a lot of stuff, but she just doesn't choose to do that right now.
Yeah, she's there.
Oh, she's here. Because everybody's kept in touch. It was just a great group of people and men, and they have wonderful spouses and raised great kids, and lived happy lives and stuff like that. And when Dad passed, he passed in 21. Freddie died maybe a week before Dad, and then Sam died like 4 or 5 months after that. Wow. So they all lived great long lives and interesting lives. And so we went up to a lot of the we went up to Morgantown for the funeral for both of them. Sam had a couple funerals, but they had something in Morgantown. You guys might have been there, but all their siblings, we keep in touch with the kids. And Freddie's daughter really wanted to be here today, but she had a family issue going on.
Yeah.
And so.
And one of the things let me ask a question, then I'll turn it to Greg. Your dad, Bill, was a big time high school star up in Moundsville, recruited by the Big Ten, wanted him very badly.
Correct.
Ohio State, Michigan, Iowa, others want him. But he stayed home. Why did he pick West Virginia?
Well, from what I understand, and I'm sure I'm going to be corrected here in a minute, Mom, that they were from Moundsville, and so his parents could be there. His parents could get her. Everybody didn't fly back then and everything, and it was really close to it. And then, from what I understand, also they really bonded with Pappy Lewis. And I had heard a story many years ago, and I can be corrected on this too, that, you know, my grandmother, I never knew my grandmother. She died before I was born. Dad had 6 kids before he was 29. We're all 6 of us are 13 months apart.
Wow.
So oh, I know. And so, he, you know, my grandmother did not like my dad playing football because, from what his sister said, she didn't want little Billy getting hurt. Well, he was 6'2". He was a big guy compared to the rest of them, but he was athlete of the year his senior year at Moundsville. He loved basketball. Even when he got older, they won the silver medal in the senior Olympics in his basketball team. You know, he was just a well-rounded athlete and enjoyed it. He played track. He ran track, and then I think he played baseball too.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Now his brother was 2 years older than him, and he played at Pitt. He went to Pitt, and whoever the recruiter was, I'm not all the way certain how this goes, but then he ended up, my Uncle Charlie came back and he went to West Virginia and finished up there and became a teacher and stayed in Moundsville the rest of his life. So
that's got to be, you know, you mentioned some of those names and some of the teammates and the fact that the family stayed close. You said they lived amazing lives, but you obviously did too. What's some of your memories of those times? That has to be some fond memories.
Well, there was a bar. It always starts with a bar. We were in Morgantown once, and we were little. I remember we were little. And, you know, again, all 6 of us are 13 months apart. I'm number 5. And so Mom had Dad watch the kids, and we went to this bar after a game. And it was, you guys probably knew where it was. It had all this sports. It was called Freddy's. Did you ever go there? It had all this sports memorabilia there. And from what I understand,
I played the 5th.
Oh, well, all Dad did was he just lined all 6 of us out front, and we sat on a curb like Sam and Dad and probably Gene and the rest of the group were in the bar. So here we are, you know, way to babysit Dad. But he knew nobody was going to mess with 6 kids, you know. So, yeah, but he really enjoyed playing at West Virginia. He was very proud of being from Moundsville. And then when he went to West Virginia, he was a West Virginia boy, you know.
Yeah.
And when he left, he was recruited at all these places and stuff. And he was glad he came back to West Virginia. And then his senior year is when he was he went to the North-South game. And I noticed how you all were talking about that Lenny. Who was
Lenny Moore?
Lenny Moore, because Lenny Moore and Dad were both on the same team in the Senior Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Dad got the outstanding linesman there. Mom still has the trophy and everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny to hear all these names now that, you know, like Rosie Greer and Jim Brown. And you didn't realize that, you know, had my dad continued playing, why my dad was at why my dad went to Cleveland, when he went to the Cleveland Browns, he was only there for a short period of time, and then he got drafted in the military. So my parents were married at Fort Knox.
Wow.
And then when he got out, Sam called him, and he was up in, I think he was at the Giants. He was at the Giants, and Dad went up there. But, you know, by that point, you know, I think my dad was just ready to do something different. And we have his contract, $6,100. Isn't that crazy?
That's amazing. Now, your family made national news after the football career was over. Greg and I were reading this article.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'm telling you, it happened in the Buffalo area, right? About the ring.
When our house got robbed?
Yeah. Now, see, the reason I bring it up, it's a great human interest story. But my wife and I went to WVU. We're from Batavia, so we're from Western New York. So where were you living in Buffalo? And tell everybody the story about the ring.
What happened? It's a watch. But what happened was
that's right. Watch.
My dad got out of football. He started working for 84 Lumber. So we moved a lot. And so we had moved to Cheektowaga, New York.
Oh, yeah.
So we were living there, and we were all competitive swimmers. So we had been out that night, and when we got home, you can imagine with 6 kids, there were so many trophies and everything. So we had big, long trophy cases, and all the trophies were on the ground. I remember walking in the garage. And so our house had been robbed. And they took my grandfather, my dad's World War I guns and some things like that that didn't have names on them, but they took my dad's Sugar Bowl watch from West Virginia. So that had to have been around, I'm guessing 1969 or 70. I'm just guessing because we moved to Huntington. We live in Huntington. We just came over here to spend time with the Latheys. And so the house got robbed. And for years, my siblings and I, we would look on eBay and everything, just the chance that we might get his watch back because it had his name on the back of it. And so when my dad passed, a little while after that, a dear friend of mine works and owns that funeral home. So she called me and said, there is a man that's trying to get a hold of somebody, the family of Bill Underdonk, which we've heard all our life. You have no idea. Underclank, we've heard it all. And so they gave me the telephone. She gave me the phone number. She said he would only talk to you. He would only talk to a member of the family. So I called this man. And I don't know what came over me because it was just one of those things that you just know, what else would they have of ours up there? Because my grandfather's guns did not have his name on. And so he got real quiet. He said, can you tell me if you lost anything or anything belongs to your dad? And I just said, you have my dad's watch, don't you? I just knew it. And I was only like 6 or 7 when that occurred. I just knew that was the watch. And he said, yes, I do. And it had Dad's name engraved on the back. My mom has the watch on with her right here. And so Here, let me have it. Gene's got his too, but
wow.
Can you see it?
Oh, yeah.
Put it up closer.
Okay, hold on. That's oh wait. Where am I?
Yeah, go the opposite way.
The wrong way.
There you go. Yeah,
but
you got
on
it.
the back of the watch is where the inscriptions are. Wait, I'm going the wrong way. Can you see it?
Go the other way.
Keep coming.
The other way.
There we go.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. I don't know what I'm doing.
Everything looks backward on the screen, so you got to do opposite what you think you should have to do.
You can tell that I don't do this often. But it's on there. It has his name engraved and everything. And so what I said to him, I said, well, how much is this going to cost us? Because, on eBay, everybody's got a price for everything.
Yeah.
He goes, I can't take anything for that. It was stolen. But he had bought it at a pawn shop. Wow. And it was probably 2 miles from where we lived. So he sent it back free. And so we sent him a substantial amount of money. I mean, just a reward for being kind and everything. And he was just such a nice man. And he wouldn't, when we were interviewed, he would not let me say his name. I could just say his first name. I couldn't say his last name for whatever reason. He was a watch collector. And he just saw the watch and thought it was interesting. And he sent it back, 70 years later?
Wow.
Unbelievable. That's amazing.
And I always say, it was like, what was rewarding is my dad was not materialistic at all. But it bothered my mom more than it bothered my dad, I think. Because, he would go to all the Sugar Bowl reunions and everything, and everybody had their watches on. And I'm just glad that guy had the sense to read the back and do some research and get it back. Even though it wasn't in Dad's lifetime, it was in Mom's, because they'd been together since they were kids. And that was just a really nice thing for him to do.
That's a great story.
I didn't know it was national, though. You're telling me it was national. I didn't know that.
Yeah, Frank, you did pull an article on that. I forget what the publication was, but Frank pulled I don't know if it's a newspaper or magazine. I just remember reading the article.
Yeah, it made national news. Yeah. I think the article I pulled out was from the Times, West Virginia. Yeah. I think that's what it was.
Really is. I was on Facebook and I just put that on. I said, this crazy. Well, do you all know Keith Morehouse?
Yes.
Yes, he went to high school with us.
Okay.
Keith and Debbie, he and his wife went to school. They're 2 years older than me. And so she saw the story, and then Keith wanted to interview my mom, but she really doesn't like being interviewed anymore. Right. And so, even though she's she would be a really good person to interview because she could tell you everything that was going on back then.
Wow.
Yeah, she used to say that Dad and Sam, the only time they ever fought, Sam Huff and him, was that about cheating in cards. he would call her at home and he'd say, Sam's cheating on cards. And then Sam on the phone, Dolores, that's all. But, I'm just really proud that my dad went to West Virginia and he continued with those friends that he had. And, Freddie and Jean and Gary Bunn. Gary Bunn passed in the last year or so. And, with Sam gone and most of them are gone now. And it's, but they all lived really good lives. Some of them not as some of them should have been, because some of them really did pass on early on.
That's
Last time I saw.
Oh, Gene's coming in. Hold on.
Last time I saw Bill, I gave him a big kiss on the side of his cheek. That was the last time.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, as you know, because Jill helped me with the book, Band of Brothers, and one of the things that I remember that Dale Wolfley always talked about, it's the book, but the Band of Brothers applies to more than just one era of WVU football. In fact, I want to put this up since he couldn't join us, but this is a picture of Jim Peyton from Wheeling, who was going to be with us tonight. And it's too bad he couldn't. But
who's it?
That was Jim Peyton.
Yeah, Jim Peyton. Yep. Yeah, that's his picture right there.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and also, Gene, Frank, I know you're always doing stories and stuff. Gene put together this book here.
Let me put this up. Hold on. There we go.
There's no other copies.
Whoa, wow.
But, there are other copies? Oh, yeah, Gene put this together.
Wow.
That is fantastic.
And inside of it, it's really cool inside. I've never seen this. But it has all the old articles and everything.
Oh, my God.
But you should see some of the stuff my mom has, too. Christine and Jean have been together a long time, and Mom and Dad were together. And, you just keep it's stuff that would interest you all with, expertise with West Virginia football.
Well, Frank, Mom don't like to be interviewed, but maybe she'd like just a personal visit from a couple old guys looking for some history. Well, we may have to make a trip down because I love to see that stuff.
See, we didn't know about this martini and cigar thing.
Yeah, that was we have an intro song we're not sure about yet.
That's right.
I always tell Frank after I hear it, I feel like I need to have a martini and a cigar after I listen to that song.
Well, if you would have said chilled Chardonnay, my mom would have said anything you wanted her to say.
That's great. That's great.
That's so fantastic.
Well, I was thinking as we were listening to your stories and Gene was talking, and I'll tell you,
him on here too.
Yeah, and Greg and I talk about this all the time, and that is that you guys just didn't play football yourselves. Yep. You were representing the university in the state of West Virginia, and there's so much to be proud of because of the way you handled yourselves, what you did, what you achieved. And I'm going to kick it to you to take this home, Greg, is that this current team reminds us of the same thing, that you can be proud of the coach, proud of the players, proud of the team. And it's more difficult, I think, these days to play for the state and for it's just tougher because of all the money in it. But you guys did us all proud, and it's our honor to talk with you and feature you. I'll kick it to you, Greg.
Yeah, one of the things, Frank, and you and I have talked about this at length, is when you look at these different eras of football, the one theme that seems to run through the entire thing from then until now is this band of brothers, this togetherness that these folks have. And you see these guys, and you hear some of those names, Sam Huff and some of those names, and they all remain friends. They all remain close knit. They all become family to each other. And I think that's one of the themes that we've seen throughout our research on these eras of football at WVU. Same with the guys that you wrote the book about. There's just a brotherhood there, and it's so fun to hear them talk about each other. It's not like, well, this guy named Sam Huff, it's like, this is my friend Sam Huff, and we did this and we did this. It's so fascinating to hear those stories and just to see the love that they had for each other and their coaches and the state of West Virginia. And it's exciting. And like you said, you look at, I think one of the things that Coach Brown's trying to do up here now is create that culture that, you're here for each other and you're here for the state of West Virginia. This is what we have. We don't have a professional team. We have this team. And I think he's doing a good job of that. But it's so much fun to see it when you can see it and you see it for real. The feelings these guys have for each other and the state of West Virginia and the program and everything. It's just so fascinating, so much fun to look back on it. Appreciate you guys so much for that. That's awesome.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Really appreciate talking with you.
We enjoyed it immensely. It was our pleasure. Trust me. And again, we thank you guys for joining us and sharing with us. And since we know you have a treasure trove, we're going to be looking for some more because we would love to sit down and look at all these things. So we'll be back in touch with you. I guarantee you, Jill. You
with the Chardonnay.
There you go with the Chardonnay. I won't bring it. I don't smoke cigars for real, but we can hold one, I guess, if it makes you feel better. All right, guys. Thank you all so much for joining us. We surely do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Good sentiment there by Timothy. It is true. It makes you proud. It's not winning's important. We all know that.
Yeah.
But the way these guys, God, it's too bad that Jim couldn't be here because he would have. He was also a high school star up in the Panhandle. Went to West Point along with a fellow by the name of Bill Orders, who's also a great player. And then they came back to Morgantown, and they both played on those Pappy Lewis's team. Yeah. And Jill and I were talking the other day. We think we didn't go through the entire roster. University does a great job, so the rosters are still there. But we think that Gene Lathey, Jim Peyton, and Gene Beef Lamone, tremendous player who's also in the WVU Hall of Fame, are the only surviving members of the Pappy Lewis era. Those teams in the early 50s. Yep.
And again, it makes me wish that we would have got together on this 20 years ago, so we could have connected with all those folks. But to have some of them still around and then to hear those stories, unbelievable. And and I know from your work with the 69-70 group and those guys, again, just what a bind there is between them, what a thread there is between these guys and the friendships and the love and the accomplishments after school and those type of things. It's just truly fascinating. And I hope more and more people will take notice of these times. I think, we're trying to do our part, but I hope that folks take more interest in this and look back at that history because you don't want to lose it. And as we lose these guys, part of it is gone, and hopefully we can continue to do this and bring those stories to life and just hope people will pay attention and look at this stuff because it is truly fascinating. And for a Mountaineer fan, just great stuff.
And, and we've talked about this, and this is sort of a plea to all the WVU alums out there. If there's anything that Greg and I have benefited from doing this show together, and Greg's been interviewing lots of folks for lots of years, is that what pride we should have in West Virginia University and the alums. I mean, with Jerry West passing, we had an opportunity to interview the great Willie Akers. What a first-rate person he is. And we can just go down the list of these guys that have played and then gone on and really done wonderful things with their lives. I mean, that was one of the themes of the book that I wrote, but it's not just that era. It's a consistency. And for the alums, people will say, where'd you go? I went to West Virginia. Oh, yeah. But, hey, there's a lot of schools can't say what we just said. And that is, I think it's precious because
I do too.
Wonderful people.
I do
wonderful
too. Thank God we have the videos now that can be saved forever, and people can enjoy this 50 more years from now, hopefully, and hear this history. But fascinating stuff. And Frank, I don't know. I know we've talked several times about future shows and that sort of thing. I don't know what we have coming up next week. My mind has been scrambled with all these names. Do we have a lineup for next week already? Or
it's
not?
Now the people watching are thinking, well, these guys conspired to do this.
Yeah.
But next week, actually, we got into a conversation with John Antonic a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
Many of you may know John, works at WVU or has for years, is in charge of the social media operation, the content, athletic content, writes on WVU Sports. And with the Penn State game coming up in a month, John wrote a great story about the 1998 Ohio State West Virginia game, which he's going to talk about. There's an article that will feature next week because he went to the game and so on. When the number one team in the nation, Ohio State, this doesn't happen very often, opened the season by coming to Morgantown. Yeah. And so John's going to be with us next week to talk about great openers, WVU great football openers. And there's nobody who knows the history of West Virginia athletics, not just football, but athletics in general, than John Antonic. And then the week after that, we're going to have Kevin White with us. And that links to today's program, right? Because Kevin was the quarterback in 1984 when West Virginia finally beat Penn State.
Yeah.
Gene Lathey played in the last win before that in 1955. And then Kevin White played quarterback in the 1984. And if people haven't seen it, there's a great photo at the stadium at the end of the game, the word finally.
Yeah.
Finally. So Kevin's going to be with us on the 31st of July. So we got John Antonic next week, and then we have Kevin White talking about what it was like playing in that game when there was that long losing streak.
Well, I'll tell you what, that was one of the most exciting games I've ever been to. And I think I told you that I think it was on a Halloween night, and to hear Jack Fleming's introduction to that game at night would send chill bumps down your spine. If you're a Mountaineer fan, everybody out there listening needs to go to YouTube, pull up Jack Fleming's pregame call, WVU Penn State 1984. It was awesome. And that's exciting. And like you said, John Antonic, and we've had him on before. And Frank, I know you're like me, you can just sit back and listen. You don't even have to talk. And he's fascinating. He knows so much history and so well spoken about it all. And it'll be fun to talk to him again. I really look forward to that because he's a great guest.
And the thing about John that I really admire, he's not only a great writer, but he's not flying at 30,000 feet. He's got all the facts. And there was an exchange on Facebook the other day when Weatherholt got drafted, and someone said, "Was that the highest draft choice of any Mountaineer athlete ever?" And John came back, "No." And then he put the couple of them. Well, how about that? No, he goes, no. He went through across 3 or 4 sports, going back to 1950. No, I think he went back to, he had Hot Rod Huntley's draft choice and Rod Thorne's draft choice with Jerry West and with all these other guys and Sam Huff. It's just like, it's amazing when people can do that because
he's a walking encyclopedia.
Oh man, is he ever? So
so that'll be a lot of fun. As well, Kevin White. We're looking forward to both of those. This hour and 15 minutes flew by. We knew it would, and we thank Gene and Jill so much for joining us, sharing those stories with us. Great stuff and good stuff for the archives. We want to keep that around forever. Frank, it's always a pleasure. Enjoyed it and look forward to seeing everybody again next Wednesday. again, John Antonick will be here with us. And like I said, a Mountaineer walking encyclopedia.
That's correct.
For that. So we hope you'll join us in. Until then, good night.